There we go.
Brilliant.
Right.
Hi, Sally.
Hi.
So today we will be having a quick chat just about your practice and how you're getting on with your prison residency, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll fire the first question at you. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your arts practice and what you mainly do.
Okay, so I mainly make, I guess, collages, but using words. So I cut words out of all sorts of books, any sort of books. I have words that I cut out all the time and anything that I'm interested in, but then if I'm working specifically towards something, then I have that in my head and will cut out or pick out bits that are relevant to whatever subject it is. Sometimes not super relevant, but kind of enough for you to get an idea and to make you think, really, I guess, rather than writing it all down. It's more about snippets of things for you to think about. I think that words are in a lot of ways a better way to get images into people's heads rather than telling them this is, you know, a picture of this thing. If you give somebody a word, everybody will come at that from a different point of view, from a different perspective. So each piece will produce different thoughts in each person. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
So how do you go about choosing your source material?
Books, just
anything,
any old book. It's yeah, so any, I guess I try and get, so older books, the text, the actual printing is different, so you've got a different font, and in some of the older ones it's either really small or sometimes it's really big.
Yeah.
It's also the paper is different, so when you've got a whole pile of it, when you've got it all stuck together, you've got all the differences in the texture and the sizes of the text, and the different kind of the shape of the words is different. Even with sort of going right back to the really old ones when the F's are S's, which so getting the variety in there, but also it's quite nice to use the books that, you know, I think people think books are gonna, I don't know, go to book heaven, but they don't, you know, they just get recycled because they get to a point where they're just too tatty for, and they can't sell them in charity shops because they're too, whereas I can quite happily then cut them up and give them a new, and people give me books now. I've been doing it long enough for people to bring me things and go, oh, this is interesting because, you know, the paper's a funny color, or it's got these letters in it, or which is really cool.
Have you got a particular favorite of like an era or a writing style that you like?
I love old books to look at, look just to physically look at the text and the way it's put together. In terms of finding words, just your basic generic kind of Who Killed the Lady type book with detectives, because there's a lot of dialogue, and if you're looking for sort of like joining words, it's a much better place to look for the words, whereas sort of like highbrow prose is great for really big words or interesting words, but when you just need to find I am or I was, or the other day I was looking for just the word just, and it's, so if you've got a lot of dialogue, you're more likely to find those words then. So you're sort of like your detective-y type things, mystery, where people are thinking things through in conversation. That's the best. You also kind of get an idea for the sort of words. So you'll kind of pick up an older book, and if you're looking for something and you know that you're not, that the chances of you finding it are quite slim in that book, but that one will be better. So it doesn't always work. Sometimes it can just take ages, and sometimes you do it, and when you start looking for a different word, then you find the one that you were trying to find the day before.
I bet you do, yeah. So do you generally know what word you need to look for when you're searching for your text, or is that something that just develops quite organically?
No, it kind of with the one that I did for that's on the wall in the cell in the prison, sometimes you've got sort of like two bits, but they will join together, or you've got the beginning of something and then you've got kind of like the end over here, and you think, actually, if I can just find, I need this word or that word, then I can fit them together and it will say something more.
Yeah.
With the more general things, I'm looking, because you're sat on the one that I'm doing at the moment, that's why I'm looking down here. It's more about literally just finding something that will fit in the right size gap.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So because it's very disjointed, this has got no kind of theme to it. This is literally just stuff that I like.
Yeah.
And so I can put if I've got a little gap, I can just stick anything in there because it doesn't make any difference. Whereas if you're working and it's got a specific theme, it has to fit, and that can make it so much harder.
Yeah. Because
even though you kind of know in your heart nobody's going to know that it's not the right word, but you know it's not the right word.
Yep, that makes
sense. And if it takes
sense.
you like half an hour to find it, and it's a great feeling when you find it as well.
Like a Where's Wally moment.
Yeah, it's just like, yay, brilliant. And then you kind of go, well, where was I going to put that? So I do sometimes get post-its, put arrows, and stick it and go, right, this is what we're looking for, and that's why. Don't forget, because you get so involved in looking for something, then you start reading as you're going along, and before you know it, you've got the word that you wanted, but you can't remember why it was that you wanted it. So that's always a danger.
Yeah, great. So taking all of that into account, how did you develop those ideas into form what you've made for your prison residency?
When you first suggested it, I sort of went straight to the suffragette thing, because it's just kind of the obvious place to start. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. So I looked up, and Mabel Capper was the suffragette that was imprisoned in Shepton Mallet. And when I got the registers for 1911, which was when she was in there, and then I started looking at all the other names.
Yeah.
And realizing that actually, although what Mabel Capper did was amazing, and going to prison for a month is an incredible thing to do, that it was a choice that she made. It was a choice that she made for a cause that she believed in, which is just astounding to do that. But all the other people, all the other women that I was sort of coming across, you kind of know that the reason that they're there is completely different.
Yeah.
They're there because they were feeding their children, or there are women who are in prison because they've been swearing or they've been drunk, which basically means that they've been imprisoned for being not ladylike.
Yep.
And so I started thinking, actually, somebody needs to, I need somebody to see these names as well, you know, because these are just like the ordinary people who, you know, whose lives are just, it makes you feel really lucky that you sit here looking at them, you know, in your, with heat and light and everything. So I'd gone through and I'd looked at all of that, and I'd been reading about women in prison, and then when I started going through the books, I've kind of got that in my mind. It's also I've been talking to people about this, saying that actually you kind of look at these women with a sort of, they were all suffering, you know, it was all terrible, they were all, but actually, do you know what, maybe some of them were awful. Maybe if you ever met them, you couldn't feel sorry for them. But even if that's the case, you know, doing 2 weeks hard labor for stealing a hairbrush, it's still wrong, you know. So whilst you can't, so it's going through and finding things that reflect the awfulness of what happened to these women and the awfulness of being put in prison. And especially there, you know, it's not like it is now, it's no heat, it's just horrible. I don't know why I keep focusing on the cold, but trying to balance that a bit. So it's kind of, you know, if you come across and somebody's describing a woman and saying she's awful, or, you know, she's got no morals, or she's just terrible, it's kind of putting that in as well, because that's part of it. And you need people to kind of look at that and go, well, actually, you know, perhaps if I had to turn to prostitution to feed my family, I would probably be drunk and disorderly as well, because
definitely.
Oh, how do you cope with that? So there's this huge kind of, it's not just as straightforward as like, here is this woman, you must feel really, really sorry for her. It's like, yes, you must, but then you also need to look at why she's there, and is it reasonable to put her in prison just because she's swearing? And because she offends you? Perhaps if she didn't need to do that, she wouldn't offend you, because she could be the person that she wanted to be. So it's anything that kind of relates to all of that. So you kind of carry all that in your head as you're reading through these things. It's a very long-winded way of putting it, but
you've had a lot of research that's gone into each of these women that you've decided to look at, and it's, you know, looking at their story, and you've picked up on things, you know, you mentioned that you've picked up on it being very cold within the cells, and that they didn't have what we have today, you know. So picking up on that, they were all very, you know, isolated within their cells. Most of the women, and even in society, were kept quite isolated.
I think so.
And in your for your residency, you've been working remotely. Have you found any similarities, or could you just talk a little bit about how you found working remotely on this project?
I think the interesting thing is I kind of don't want to go there. I have this idea of what it was like, and I've got that in my head, and everything that I've produced or am producing and still is based on that idea. Now, a lot of that has come from reading an account of a woman who spent 15 years in prison in the late 1800s. And I don't want to be in that environment where it's actually quite modern now.
Yeah.
So, you know, there'll be like the health and safety notices and things that don't fit, which obviously do fit because they have to be there.
Yeah.
But it's like we were saying about having paint on the walls,
Mm-hmm.
and it just not looking how it does in my head.
Yeah.
That I kind of feel that that actually being in there, it would be too modern.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't fit these women into that modern space.
Yeah.
Because that's not where they are in my head. And that perhaps if I was in there, the work that I produce might not feel quite right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think it's such a not wanting to, I don't like having lots of people around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being in prison, obviously it would be horrible for the prison part of it, but also just being surrounded by people all the time,
Yeah.
for me now would add to that. I don't know, it's a very strange kind of feeling of doing something,
Mm-hmm.
especially as it's called a residency and
Yeah.
I'm not at all resident. And whilst I feel part of it, but I don't actually want to be there.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an odd feeling because I should want to be there, but I've kind of got this feeling that I've got this little prison in my head,
Yeah.
or this cell in my head, and these kind of women who've got all, a bit like dream people, where
Yeah.
they don't actually have faces,
Mm-hmm.
but they've all, the women that I've used,
Yeah.
they've all got a personality, and I don't think they would fit in what is there now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and being like yourself, being remote, and also the taking these individual stories where they're all, you know, you're taking each story as a single story of these women, and
Yeah,
when you place them into their cell environment, if you're physically there, it would completely change how you view them.
absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah, and because of what I've done for the sort of, so I've done the piece that's on the wall, or the two pieces, and then daily putting up one woman, but with just a few words about that.
Yeah.
And although it looks quite random, it's very much looking at her and her age and what the sentence was and what she did,
Mm-hmm.
and then getting a feeling for what I want to say about that.
Yeah.
I kind of don't want anything around me. I
Yeah.
don't want to be influenced by anything else, you know. I don't know, it sounds a bit, I
It
can't
makes
put it
total sense that, you know, you're
it sounds a bit faffy, but I think it's a bit like that thing between like words and pictures again. So if you've got an actual cell and you've got a picture of it, then you've got something already in your head.
Indeed.
Whereas if you only have words, you have to make that picture for yourself. So you make it for yourself, and then you go somewhere and somebody goes, well, actually, no, that's wrong. It looks like that. And then you've got that, like, well, that means that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas actually we don't know what a lot of these people look like, or whether they were nice people, or whether you would feel sorry for them, or, and I like that fact that I'm suggesting something, but you could just go, well, actually, no, I don't think so. And I've tried not to make it all kind of doom and gloom. I have tried to, like, some of them just go, well, you know what, these were drunk women, maybe they were quite funny, you know, maybe they were laughing and having a, you know, maybe you would just kind of go, oh, they're up to no good, and you wouldn't feel sorry for them as well. But keeping that remoteness keeps other things, other influences out of what I'm trying to make.
And
I think
just picking up on that, so obviously you are working remotely, and all of your work you've sent through the post to get to the cell. When you was making your work, did that element, so thinking I have to post this somewhere, did that impact like the scale or what your ideas were? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it, having got the box that people are going to put the forms that I've made into, it's kind of like, it needs to fit in, it can't be bigger than this box, because the obvious thing is to fit it into this space. So also so I've got I've done the two sort of collages on ledger paper, which means that they've already got a fold in them. So as long as you fold it the right way, it's fine. It kind of keeps the same shape. And I also, because it's just stuck on the wall with blue tack in the prison, I didn't want it to, I wanted it to be very much part of it. So if it goes crinkly because it's damp, you know, just like anybody would be affected by the damp or the cold or go crinkly. So yeah, it was very much a, whilst you don't want to put a limit on it, or you don't want to put it into a box, it was literally going in a box. So yeah, and then, you know, how am I going to, there's kind of a link between that something being put away and it's ever so slightly out of your control, which is exactly what it would be like if, you know, if somebody you knew was in prison, you're governed by other things. Then you can't just do what you want to do and can't go, what, I want it to be this big, you know, well, you can't have it that big, you can only do it this big, which I quite like sometimes because it makes it harder. It also means if you've got far too many words, you have to be more picky and make sure you get the good ones in. And that feeling of sending something off and just assuming or hoping that it's going to arrive and it's going to be fine. There's that unknown element of what if it gets lost.
And I guess there's the element of, as you said, your work is very controlled. You select the words, you select the placement, and then you're doing the complete opposite to that. You're sending your work off to a cell to be confined again, but you don't have the control over its new confinement.
No.
Do you find that is a challenge, or have you quite enjoyed the unknown?
I'm not keen on the unknown, really. I have no criticisms with where it is and how it's been done, but I would have to be honest and say I would have done it slightly differently. But then there's that kind of like, well, you didn't go and do it, did you? So you can't kick off and go, well, why did you put it up there? Why didn't you put, or why isn't that directly over the thing? Or you know, those little things that you have to go, well, you could have gone and done it yourself and you didn't, so you can't complain that somebody else has done something differently. Well, of course they did, because that's what happens. And that kind of not having that last little bit of control, it won't do me any harm. It's forced
you to let go a little bit.
little bit, yeah.
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 I'm sure it'll have positive outcomes.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for me anyway. It's good for me.
And definitely picking up from positive outcomes. Obviously, the way you've kept in touch with others on the residency have been through digital means, so Zoom calls, Instagram and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And out of seeing images of people's work, you have collaborated with another artist. Would you be able to just tell us a little bit about how that come around and what your plans are?
My work is in a cell with another artist, Sharon Gale, and so she's made 2 aprons, and they've got sort of women's names and their age and what they were sentenced for and their sentences and what have you. So and she's remote as well, so we kind of had sort of 2 things in common. And there was a like a set of sort of inbuilt shelves, and you were suggesting collages, and I was thinking, well, it's in my cell, so I should probably offer to do to maybe do something to put there. And then you were saying perhaps you could both do it, so I messaged her and said, right, you know, do you want to do something together? And she said yes. And I'm not quite sure where the book cover thing, but I've got some random just book covers, old book covers. So so I've sent her half of 2 sets, and I've kept 2. And we're going to so I'll do my 2, then send them to her, and then she's doing 2 and sending them back. Hopefully to get them in there before the end of the
residency.
Yeah, that would be the plan. But then, because it all depends on the post and how quickly they go, because the box got to Luminara really, really quickly, and which is a great big thing, and a little packet with a couple of book covers in has taken like 4 days. So
oh goodness.
Yeah, so we'll just see. But it's nice to like I was saying, the women who are actually in the prison have formed this like quite cohesive group.
Yeah.
So it's quite nice to have something going with the people who aren't there as well. And even though I don't feel isolated at all, I still feel part of it. It's just quite nice, and it's just nice when people do other things and you have to work around that, because it's a bit like I was saying before, you have an idea of what they'll do, and then they've got a habit of sending you something completely different that you have to work around. So
it seems really letting go is quite common actually in this practice, something that maybe has been a bit unexpected, because obviously you're sending work out to someone else who you don't know them personally, you don't necessarily know all their arts practice, so you're not sure what you're going to get back. I've
got no idea at all. I mean, and even if you go and you look up what they do, you can still only react to what you get. So, you know, I know that she paints on pennies and things, so I've kind of got that in my head a bit. So in my head, she's maybe going to stick a penny on it, which she probably, well, then she said something about screen printing, and I was like, oh, okay. Hadn't even known that was a thing. So it'll be fun to see what comes of it.
So your motto will be expect the totally unexpected.
Absolutely, yes. And then try my best not to it's a real kind of responsibility that somebody's, you know, done something, and then what if you do something to it and they go, oh really? that's what you thought? So there is quite a feeling of responsibility to not disappoint other people or not spoil what they've done. But I guess that's something that we all
definitely I think we all question,
struggle with a little bit.
Yeah, I think your collaboration will be amazing, and it's going to be a great addition to what you and Sharon have done in your combined cell. As you
I'm
said, you're
sure it will
both
be.
remote workers, so this will be something to bring you both together, which will be great. And
Yeah.
yeah, we're very much looking forward to seeing your outcomes.
Yeah, me too.
Have you got any just any last thoughts or feelings or comments about your experience so far?
No, I think the only thing this is the first thing like this that I've ever done, and I wouldn't have thought about doing it because it's a residency.
Yeah.
And you know, for the very nature of it, you expect to only be able to do it if you're there.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to tell people that, you know, actually I'm on a residency at the moment.
Brilliant.
When I'm clearly not anywhere different to where I normally am. And I think for people to just have a go at things and to be able to look at things slightly differently. So it's kind of changed the way I look at things, and things that I've thought were maybe not doable or not appropriate for me, that actually they might be, and that I can do things. You can make things work. Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for that comment, and I really hope you enjoy your remaining time with residency period, and we look forward to seeing your work soon.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you so much.